Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Marquita here. It has been a little while, only a week, but it seems like so long. And I am back with a book review. It is Black History Month. So of course I'm going to be sharing with you some books about Black people or by Black people. So usually will be about Black people as well. And I also want to share what I'm wearing nor is what I'm wearing, literally. And this is from one of the previous Black History Month collections that Target does. And so I will give you guys a little view. It's a full sweatsuit. It says Nor is what I'm wearing today. And this was one of the outfits and the matching sweatsuits that I got from Target's Black History Month. It was like maybe 2 years back, I think. But I really liked it. It's really comfortable too and cozy. And yeah, that's what I'm wearing today. So I just want to share that as well. But today, like I said, we're going to go ahead and get into this book review slash, my commentary. It's not going to be any spoilers. Put that up there. There are not going to be any spoilers. I am going to talk about some of the stories in detail, but I'm going to try my best not to give anything away because I think this is a good, interesting book. So again, this is Heads of the Colored People by Nafisa Thompson-Spires. I think it's Spires. I did order this book off Amazon. I think I paid like $9.99 for it. But again, with Amazon, the prices change all the time. They do tend to have a pretty decent sale on books from time to time. And sometimes you can get, like, if you buy two, you get a discount. So it's hard to say what the actual price would be if you order off Amazon. The cover price is $16 for the paperback, because this is a paperback. And then there's also a discussion guide at the end, which I love here. And there's also an author's note, so you can read that. I love when authors add discussion guides, and I love when they kind of give us a little more information after the fact, because I think that it helps us to, one, understand where the author's coming from and what their intention and perspective was when they were writing the book. And also it kind of helps us see, like, did we get or take from it what they were intending for us to take from it. This is a book of short stories, and it's very interesting. The stories don't really overlap. And a couple of them kind of sort of, but for the most part, they are separate incidents, separate stories. The characters don't really overlap like that. But I want to read the back where it says here, an electrifying debut. So this is the author's first book, and I would say this is an amazing job here for someone's debut book. Nafisa Thompson-Spires grapples with race, identity politics, and the contemporary middle class in this vivid, fast, funny, way smart, and verbally inventive collection. And the reason I wanted to read that is because those key things like race, identity politics, and being in the contemporary middle class as a Black person, those are all addressed throughout the stories, and a lot of the characters will be dealing with one or more of these issues in the story. And the spin that the author takes on these stories is very thought-provoking, in my opinion, from what I got from it. And I think there's so many little messages, and then there's kind of like a big picture that we could all take away, and some of that can be shaped also based on, and when I say some of that, what you take away from the stories could be based on your own experiences and your own perspective on some of these topics and issues. I could relate to some of the either situations or environments or whatnot, because I feel like either I know people who fall into those categories or have experienced it myself, or both. So I really enjoyed reading it, and the more I got into it, the more I kind of got the big picture and what the point of the stories were, and kind of where the author was going with their writing style and what they were presenting and all of that. So I really enjoyed it. Very interesting book. So I'm not going to talk about each individual story, but there are a few that I want to talk about that had some things in it that, kind of stood out to me. So one being the first story. And the first story, I would say, honestly, at first, I didn't really understand where the book was going when I read it. And then that was also before I think I realized it was a collection of short stories, because I was thinking it was like one story. But there are two men involved, or two black, one's a teenager, one's a man, grown man, main characters in there. And they're very interesting because when you think about the boy, he's a teenage boy, the young black teenage boy, he stands out because of his interests, because of the way he looks, because of the way he carries himself, dresses, all of that. And I think that's a very good reminder about how society as a whole, not just black people, but society as a whole, kind of gives us an identity or creates their own idea of our identities. And we as people tend to try to, we kind of fall into that or live up to that to some extent in a lot of cases. And this character is not, he understands kind of like what the expectation is or what the assumptions are about him as being like, if he's a black male, black teenage boy, and not necessarily negative things, but just like, if I were to ask you, what would a black teenage boy, if I said describe him in terms of looks, and how he might be dressed, what he might be interested in, that type of thing, what you would tell me would most likely be very different than this character. And that's part of the point. The character is different from the I want to say like traditional or stereotypical idea of a black teenage boy in America. Not necessarily a bad thing, but neither is bad. But just saying that he's different, and he knows that he's different, and he's comfortable with that, and that bothers people to some extent, that he is so comfortable not being kind of falling in line, in a sense, that he's comfortable with that situation, but he's comfortable, but he doesn't forget who he is. Like, he still is like, I'm still black, like I'm still a black kid, and yeah, I can code switch. I know who I am, and I can get in where I fit in, essentially. But this is who I choose to be. This is me. Like, this is my identity. So that's a very interesting thing. And the man in this story, he has a backstory as well. And you see when their worlds collide in the end result, it's a very interesting reminder that no matter how far outside of the box per se that we go in terms of like kind of what society thinks or expects or whatever of us, how at the end of the day we're still viewed as a certain thing or a certain way. We still are viewed as that box person, even no matter what. And you do see that in that story. So like I said, I don't want to give it away what happens or whatnot, but I just want to say, when you see the two people, the two men in this story, and you understand their background, it'll make a little more sense how the end result is still the same regardless. So that was the first story. And then there's another story where there are two women who both are very well educated. They both have PhDs, doctorate degrees. One has a PsyD, which is a doctorate in psychology, and the other one has an EdD, which is doctorate of education. So both very educated women, and they have daughters. They each have a daughter who attends this kind of wealthy, well, not kind of, but it is a wealthy private school. And they are, the families, those two families they're very successful. They have good life. They're upper class. And the two daughters are the only two black kids in the school. And they have been, within that cohort or whatever, they have been the whole time. Like, it's always been the two of them for years. And so you would think, almost by default, that the only two black girls in the school would be friends, or at least would have some kind of bond or relationship or something. And that is definitely not the case here. And we also see the mothers kind of going back and forth. Basically, an incident has happened between the two girls and at the school, and it led to some disciplinary action. And the two women are discussing what happened and kind of trying to get to why it happened and blah 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 via letters, email, whatever. And it's interesting because when they first start off, they start off just like two. You think these are two very well educated, very upper class women who carry themselves very well, and so you see their conversation starts off very polite, very, I guess you could say, representative of the status in which they are at right now. But as the conversation goes on, you start to see that it gradually declines. And so I think it's very funny, actually. But it's petty, it's funny. I'm here for it. But I think, I don't even know what the big picture is for that, other than, looking at the fact that even though they did achieve these high levels of success, and they are very smart, very educated women, they still can stoop back down to this lower level, essentially, in terms of their behaviors and whatnot. And also, the two daughters, like I said, they don't get along. So you would think that they would want them to get along and be friends. And it seems like at some point, maybe they did try to foster a friendship between the girls, but it just went left, and it's always gone left. And once you see how the mothers respond to each other, you might understand why that is. And it's almost like the women or the mothers are the examples to the daughters, and the daughters are kind of following that lead in terms of their relationship. So you're basically creating a second generation of a negative relationship between the two girls, because they're watching how the mothers behave, and they're kind of living out based on what they see, the interactions there. There are two other stories I want to talk about. One involves this girl who, and again, all these characters are people of color, they're all black. So this is from perspective of a black person in these situations and in these environments. So there's this one girl who is thinking about taking her own life, and so trigger warning for anybody who that's a sensitive subject, you may want to skip past. But the thing is not in the way that you would think. Like when you start thinking about that, you think, oh, like depression, dark, blah blah blah. Not really. It's almost as if she is contemplating doing this for, I don't want to say attention seeking, but essentially is attention seeking, because she goes through the thought process of, how she would do it and which method would be the best way. And she's almost like, I could do this, but then that takes too long. Or I could do that, or it would make such a mess. I could be a messy scene when whoever finds me. And then on top of that, as she's going through all these different options, she starts to think about her social media. She's looking at her social media and she's comparing what type of, or she's trying to think like, I wonder how people will respond, or I wonder like what should I post as like my final status or whatever. And or even like not even final status, but like maybe the status is leading up to um her, doing that. So she's looking and she's kind of comparing, like when I post like a picture of me like happy, or I've accomplished something, or I'm just out having fun, or just maybe a cute selfie, whatever. Like she's comparing the interaction, likes, whatever she gets on those pictures versus when she posts a negative status, or something like that. She looks at it and it seems like she gets more interaction with the negative post than when she posts like herself in a happy place or in a positive space. And so that's also something that I think is going through her head. Is almost like, people are attracted to negativity to some extent. Like they don't want, when I'm happy, when I'm showing them like, I'm enjoying life, I'm happy, I'm doing something positive, or I'm in a good space. Like people are like, okay, cool. But like when I start posting like all this dark stuff, or I'm angry, or whatever, like then that's when everybody is like, all in. And so that's kind of what has her thinking, at least from what I look at, thinking about making the decision that she wants to make or may make. And so she's like, I wonder how, what should I put? So then she starts posting like all these kind of dark statuses, like song lyrics, that kind of allude to potentially doing something to yourself, or, just posting dark statuses to see like who's going to respond. It's almost like, let me see if they even care that I'm contemplating doing this, or if I did it, like who would even care that I'm gone or that I did it, or how would people react and feel. So she's almost kind of trying to get a sense of that, without actually having to follow through with the real plan. So you see that whole thing, but it's just very interesting to me that at the end of the day, like clearly she has some issues, but at the end of the day, her main concern is like, how are people going to react or perceive this event if I go through with it, versus like the fact that, don't you think this is not a good idea? Like, it's just that. And it sounds like, and one thing I want to say about these stories is a lot of times it seems like we kind of get thrown in the middle almost. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing, but it seems like we get thrown into the middle, and you go from the middle, through the end. So we don't have a lot of the background on the characters. So we don't know, we know just enough about them to kind of understand who they are in the moment, but we don't really necessarily know what led up to them feeling or thinking or being the way they are. In some of them we do, but not in all of them. And in her case, I feel like we kind of get a little bit of information, but then you're also left kind of to interpretation, but it's enough to where you should be able to make some pretty decent inferences on why she's the way she is. Because it sounds like she has been in therapy and all of that, which is why people may be responding to her in a certain way, because it may be like, if you are known for kind of having your moments of like posting some stuff, and it's like, oh, so and so is just doing this for attention, and people aren't really paying attention to it, versus like if maybe you don't typically post stuff like that, and then you start posting all this dark, depressing stuff, then somebody might actually look at it and be like, maybe I should check on that person. And so she's also kind of monitoring that as well when she goes on her little rampage of posting dark stats. She's kind of looking to see like who even bothers to send me a text, or even post under, comment understand anybody to send me a message to even see like, is something going on or what's going on. So all of these things are driving her thought process and decisions. So I find that very interesting, but I think it's just a overall message about social media, and then also just about signs, because as I said, if it's a person who doesn't typically post stuff like that, we are more likely to be concerned if they start posting, something like totally out of character. But then at the same token, a person who does have those moments, and maybe in those times, they don't typically do anything. How do you know that this isn't that time when they are serious and they do something? So it's kind of like, almost like a little warning to just kind of make sure that you are paying attention, and that you are checking in, maybe even if it doesn't seem like it's something serious. And the last story, because this review is getting like super long, but the last story I want to touch on is, I want to say it was the last story in the book, and I found it very interesting, and I think it was a great way to kind of sum up the book, or wrap up the book rather. It's a lady who is a singer, and she sings at funerals. She's paid to sing at these funerals. And what we come to realize is that the funerals that she's singing at are these funerals of young black men who have been killed violently. And I want to say that for the most part, it would be like, like police shootings, or some manner to which they really should not have ended up in that situation. Unjust killings and all of that. So it brings you back to that whole thought of what's going on currently in America, especially in the past few years, with young black boys, and being killed unjustly for the most part. And so you have this woman who's singing at all these funerals. Again, she's paid to sing at these funerals, and that's how she makes her living. And she does enjoy singing in general, but she is almost numb or immune to the sadness. It's almost like, I'm going to do a job. Like, I'm going up here, I'm going to sing this song, I'm going to get the people in their feelings, because black funerals, the singing is essential. And it's almost like sometimes when people sing solos, they want to make the family react, and it's like you're not, it's like you want to make them emotional, and you want to make them cry, not out of sadness, but you want to get that emotion, like you want to know that your song touched them, or was just that good, like you hit, like you had that, whatever it was that really put them in that, hit those emotions. And so she's almost, I don't want to say she is immune to some extent, because it's like she does that and then she almost kind of rates her performance based on the emotions, the type of emotional response that she gets from the families. So like whether it's things that they say or how they react, like, if a bunch of people start crying or shouting or, whatever, or, if they are praising her for her, how good she sang and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of the headspace that she's in. She's also a mother of a young son, like I want to say maybe like he's a baby, not even toddler age really. So he's still a baby. And so again, this black woman, she has a young black son, baby son. And so the other thing that these funerals are making her think about is just as a mother, she's a single mother, and her child's father was also killed, violently, shot, I want to say, um, unjustly. And so she's a single mom raising a young black baby who will eventually become a young black boy. And her concern is, after being around all these funerals and having to attend all these funerals, like, how can I protect you? How, as my son, like, how can I protect you? How can I keep you from ending up in this situation, and me being that mother that's sitting there, listening to somebody sing a sad song while my child is, laying here in a casket? Like, how can I protect you? And it's just me. Like, I don't think, she starts to doubt her abilities to be able to protect her child, which I think that any parent wants to be able to protect their child always, but we know in reality, you can't be with your child 24/7 for the rest of their life. You just can't. And so as a mother of a young black boy, given the way things are happening in society, that is mentally taxing, um on her. And I mean, in real life as well, but that's mentally taxing on this character. And she's sitting here thinking, like, okay, I don't want what happened to them to happen to you. And since I don't think I know how to protect you, or I don't feel like I can protect you or prevent that from happening to you, then I have another solution. And so her solution is very drastic, but you understand her thought process. So in this one, we do really get an understanding of why she's thinking what she's thinking, and what her, I guess, like, you see it, like, it still is not, I definitely would not say it's a solution to the problem at all, but based on what she is dealt with, and based on the environments that she's been in with her, singing career, and then based on her own experiences with, the violence and the shootings and of death of, the men that were significant in her life, then that you see why the solution makes sense to her, and you understand why she feels like that might be the best solution as a mother, and as someone who is protecting, like, that to her, that was a way to protect her child. And it's irony in that when you see the solution, but that in her mind, it's her way, the only way that she feels like she can protect her child. So she starts having a thought process. And so like I said, it's a really good, very interesting thought process. So I think that Heads of the Colored People is definitely appropriate, because we are getting inside the heads of different people in different situations, different people of color in different situations and environments. And we see what leads people to think the way that they do, to react to certain things the way that they do, and how they function in certain environments based on being a person of color in those environments, and why they react that way being a person of color in those environments. So it's a very insightful book, and like I said, I do appreciate the fact that they have the discussion guide at the back, because then we can really see if what we got from the story is what the author was intending for us to get. And also, if we miss something, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that too, because I guarantee you're going to pull something good from each one of the stories. So I would definitely recommend this book. Again, it's Heads of the Colored People. It is a collection of short stories, and the author is Nafisa Thompson-Spires or Spires. Please let me know if you have read this book before. What are your thoughts if you have? And also, after hearing this summary, or not so much a summary, but after hearing my take on it, is it something that you think you might be interested in reading? And again, I just want to say that there may be some sensitive topics in there based on people's experience. Like I said, it does deal with someone contemplating taking their own life. It deals with the trauma of, the black men, the killing, the violence against black men in our society right now. So all of those things can, stir up some emotional responses based on, your experiences. But if that is not something that, you know, will disturb you to the point that, it might bring about some negative things, then I would recommend reading this book. And also because these are short stories, if nothing else, you could just skip over that story if you feel like it's going to um, have a negative impact on you. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.